On the 2nd of September 1998, Swissair Flight 111 departed New York's JFK Airport at 8:18 p.m. Destination Geneva. On board were 215 passengers and 14 crew members. The captain was Urs Zimmermann, a highly experienced instructor and veteran pilot for the airline with over 10,800 total flight hours. His first officer would be Stefan Löff with 4,800 total flight hours. The aircraft was a McDonnell Douglas MD-11, Swissair's flagship plane for transatlantic routes. About an hour into the flight, the pilots smelled smoke. They began a descent toward Halifax, Nova Scotia. They were running checklists, trying to find out what could be the cause of the smoke.
Do we see the emergency checklist for air conditioning smoke?
They believed they had time.
And we are declaring emergency now, Swissair Vanilla.
Copy that.
But at 10:31 p.m, the aircraft struck the Atlantic Ocean at high speed.
237, the bearing off Halifax View are 39.7 miles, which makes it just down in St. Margaret's Bay.
Then you're not talking to him anymore?
No, we're not talking to him and we don't see him. He was dumping fuel last we heard.
All 229 people on board were killed. The investigation that followed suit would centre on a small black box installed under every passenger seat, a device built by a Las Vegas startup that had never manufactured aviation equipment before. A device Swissair knew ran hot enough to destroy its own components, and a certification process broken enough that nobody stopped it.
Welcome to the Discovery Clock series.
The company was Interactive Flight Technologies, or IFT. It was founded in Las Vegas in 1994 by Yuri Itkis, president of Fortunet, a Russian-born engineer who had built his career in the electronic bingo industry. His new product, however, promised airlines something new and revolutionary for its time: an interactive entertainment network that would let passengers watch movies on demand, shop from their seats, and, on international flights, gamble with their credit cards. For the airline industry, in the mid-1990s, this was a promising and somewhat exciting future. Indeed, in-flight entertainment was slowly shifting from shared overhead screens to an individual backseat display. Naturally, IFT promised airlines not just passenger satisfaction, but revenue per seat. In May 1996, Swissair, eager to position itself as the future of premium air travel, signed a $72 million contract with the company as its launch customer. IFT installed its system across Swissair's fleet, which included 15 MD-11s and 3 Boeing 747s. The company itself was a small startup, approximately 30 employees with one office in Las Vegas. The actual device and system the company made was assembled largely from off-the-shelf components, standard hard drives, commercial-grade power supplies, and generic wiring. None of it was originally designed for the pressurization, vibration, and thermal stress of a commercial aircraft at 33,000 feet in the air. To install any new system on a passenger aircraft, it must be certified airworthy. In the United States, the Federal Aviation Administration, or the FAA, delegates much of this work to private companies and individual engineers. A program called the Designated Engineering Representative System, or DER. IFT first approached a DER named Edward Mlynarczyk. He later said that the prototype was, in his words, very rudimentary and unsuitable for aircraft use. But IFT pressured him to accelerate the process. He also received a phone call from a representative of the stockbroker, D.H. Blair, the firm underwriting IFT's initial public offering, asking whether certification was close to being approved and whether Mlynarczyk wanted in on the IPO. Mlynarczyk turned it down and cancelled his contract. But IFT would find another path, a dangerous shortcut that would lead it to another company, Santa Barbara Aerospace, or SBA. SBA, founded in 1994, was a subsidiary of Quaker Holding Company, the world's largest privately held coal company. SBA was an FAA-authorized repair station with the authority to issue supplemental type certificates, the official approval to modify any aircraft. But SBA had a troubled history. In early 1996, the same year IFT systems were being installed on Swissair jets, the FAA briefly revoked SBA's operating authority for repeated regulatory violations, including failure to follow proper certification procedures. SBA did address the violations, and the FAA reinstated their certificate shortly after. Then, in August 1996, SBA submitted a letter of intent to the FAA stating that they would independently certify IFT's flight entertainment system for the MD-11. The FAA approved it, despite the fact SBA conducted no independent testing of the system's electrical load, its cooling requirements, or its potential failure modes. SBA issued a supplemental type certificate in November 1996, the first of its kind for an interactive entertainment system on a commercial aircraft. The installation work was done in Switzerland. It was rushed. Much of the paperwork required to prove the system was properly certified was later discovered to be missing or never completed. The Swiss government trusted the American FAA forms at face value and accepted it, unaware that the FAA did not actually review the system itself. It did not take long for problems to start to emerge. Swissair began reporting that the in-flight entertainment electronics boxes under every passenger seat were overheating. The hard disk drives inside the units would shut down when they got too hot. And this was not something of an occasional glitch. Maintenance crews were having to replace those failed drives quite regularly. The overheating was a known operational condition, documented internally, reported to the manufacturer, IFT, which understood it as simple routine checks. Yet, despite this problem, the system remained in service. Hundreds of passengers boarded Swissair's MD-11s every day, from UN officials, scientists, business executives, families, all unaware that beneath their seats, electronic units were generating heat beyond their designed tolerance. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada would later describe what happened on the 2nd of September 1998 as a foreseeable accident. High-power electrical components placed next to flammable materials. No mechanism to detect or contain a fire once it started. The elements of catastrophe were all united in one place and designed into the aircraft itself. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada's investigation into Swissair's crash was one of the most expensive and exhaustive in aviation history for its time. It lasted from September 1998 to March 2003 and cost approximately 57 million Canadian dollars. Recovery teams retrieved over 2 million pieces of Swissair's wreckage from the ocean floor. Investigators reconstructed sections of the aircraft's forward fuselage. They had found evidence of electrical arcing in the wiring of the IFEN, or the in-flight entertainment network. An electrical arc had triggered the fire, but that alone did not kill the 229 people on board. Indeed, the arc had ignited a sheet of metallized mylar, a thermal acoustic insulation material lining the MD-11's cabin walls. Metallized mylar is a polyester film coated with aluminium. It was lightweight. It provided good thermal insulation. But when exposed to an open flame, it burned quite quickly. McDonnell Douglas had tested this material years earlier. The company's own test, a flaming cotton swab coated in oil, touched to a mylar sample, showed that the material could ignite. McDonnell Douglas documented the result. And despite this, the FAA kept the material certified. What happened with Swissair Flight 111 was that the fire had propagated itself behind the panels above the cockpit ceiling through an area the pilots could sadly not see and could not reach. The emergency checklist, designed for electrical smoke of unknown origin, assumed that the fire could be located and extinguished. But in this case, that assumption was wrong. At 10:24 p.m. local time, the cockpit voice recorder captured the final transmission after losing power due to the electrical outage.
Swissair 111, check you're cleared to start the fuel dump.
Hello?
Rescue
Rescue Center, Halifax. Coast Guard Officer Biller. Bonjour.
Aviation.
This is Halifax Terminal.
go
Do you
ahead.
have anybody on the ground that you can scramble for a search and rescue?
A little concerned
Not
about
at all.
Swissair.
Nothing.
We've lost
Nothing at all.
radar
Okay.
now.
Okay.
So, I'm not sure. We should know something here in a few minutes. He was
What's
dumping
your-
fuel.
What do you have for last position on him when you lost?
Down just around St. Margaret's Bay.
St. Margaret's Bay, eh?
Now we're just keeping an eye. We're hoping he's going to pop up here again, but
Okay.
we should be able to see him on our prime display. And we're not anything right now. Just a second. I'll see if I can get a.
Okay.
6 minutes later, at 10:30 p.m., the aircraft hit the water, killing all 229 people on impact. Less than 2 months after the crash, Swissair disconnected the IFT systems on all its remaining aircraft. Having lost its sole active client, IFT collapsed as an aviation supplier in late 1998 and never sold another in-flight entertainment system. Despite this operational collapse, the corporate entity survived long enough to initiate a legal battle in May 1999 by suing Swissair for breach of contract and destroying its business reputation, prompting a Swissair countersuit in September of that year. A year after the crash, the FAA banned the IFT system entirely from the MD-11S. The agency conducted a wider review of aircraft entertainment systems and found 18 additional installations that were improperly certified and unsafe. Following these events, the entire legal battle dissolved without any financial payouts, as IFT's corporate shell dissolved completely, and Swissair later entered bankruptcy in 2001. IFT stock, listed on the Nasdaq via an IPO orchestrated by D.H. Blair Investment Bank, a brokerage, later found guilty of defrauding investors across 15 IPOs, became completely worthless. Yuri Itkis returned to the gambling equipment business. Several D.H. Blair executives went to prison, not for the crash itself, but for securities fraud. The FAA ended up tightening oversight of designated engineering representatives. But the underlying system, where private companies are paid by the manufacturers they are supposed to regulate, still remains in place today. No one was ever criminally charged over the crash of Swissair Flight 111. Swissair and its insurers avoided public trials by paying out hundreds of millions of dollars to settle the civil liability claims of the victims' families out of court. The precise amounts were never publicly disclosed due to strict legal confidentiality agreements. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada's final report did not assign the crash of Swissair 111 to a single component, company or decision. It instead described it as a chain of events, from a startup company that built a system beyond its engineering capacity, a certification process that handed safety oversight to companies who didn't investigate properly, an airline that flew with equipment it knew overheated, and a manufacturer who knew its insulation material was flammable and left it in the fleet. Swissair Flight 111 is remembered as an aviation disaster, but its investigation reveals it as something more specific: a case study in regulatory failure, where every institution and authority that existed to prevent the catastrophe from happening had a reason to look the other way. Sadly, 229 people paid the price for that failure. Hello everyone, thank you for watching the video and for your patience and support. Please consider subscribing and sharing the video, and as always, see you in the next one.